For our latest double indie game review, we turn to two games that do very different things with guns and shooting. First, the platformer action shooter Gunbrella, and then the Max Payne romance love story of El Paso Elsewhere. Gunbrella is an action platformer where our kind of key story here is all about revenge. One day we come home to find our wife has been murdered, our child has been kidnapped, and we have been left perhaps the greatest combination of weapons since the gunblade, and that is the Gunbrella. A device that allows you to shoot, protect your head from the rain, and of course float around while dealing with bad guys. And with that, we begin a journey to find out who did this heinous crime. Gunbrella itself, while it may draw some elements of Metroidvania design in the fact that you're exploring this world, you're finding some passive upgrades, this is definitely more on the action gameplay point of view. Your Gunbrella operates whenever you open it while you're moving, it will propel you in said direction. This can be used for dashing, or while you're in the air to launch yourself further in a direction, and you can also kind of hover your way back down. During combat, opening up the power cell at the right time will allow you to block or reflect bullets and projectiles coming at you. And the game itself will have you explore a variety of levels as you kill enemies, platform, and try and complete a few side quests as well. There are multiple endings to the game based on certain decisions you make, and the game also has some very interesting story beats as it gets further along. The main issue that I have with this game from a kind of gameplay point of view is when it comes to combat and specifically avoiding attacks. As I said, your main ways of mitigating damage or avoiding it is either block it using the Gunbrella or dodging out of the way. But you see, whenever you hit the button to open up the power cell, it will launch you in the direction that you are moving, which can make movement a little bit on the floatier side. And there are a lot of cases where I attempted to dodge an attack and instead just dashed right into the enemy or into another part of the attack and took a hit. You'll also find that as the game goes on, you really do need more attack damage. That is one of the most important things, as some of the enemies can get very bullet spammy with their attacks, and the power cell or the reflect doesn't do a really good job, in my opinion, of kind of mitigating all that damage. With that said, I did enjoy this game, and I definitely would like to see more in terms of the design. The platforming, I would say, is on the moderate side. There's like one section that felt kind of Celeste adjacent, but all in all, this is definitely not going to be a game that's going to test you in that regard. And with that said, I would recommend this game if you are looking for an action platformer, and you also have a thing for umbrellas or gunbrellas. We now go from a revenge story to a kind of love story with El Paso Elsewhere. This is a third-person shooter heavily inspired by the slow-mo and shooting of Max Payne. Our story is that we have come to the town of El Paso, Texas to stop Dracula from enacting a ritual that will destroy the world as we know it. Unfortunately, we were once dating her, and there's a lot of emotions and baggage that comes with it. The game's MO is you'll go through a level, get a little bit more of very stylized stories, to then go to the next level to begin your shooting and diving once again. The story in this game is really well done, and there is some fantastic use of voice acting and cinematography to it. Despite the fact that most of the cutscenes only exist in kind of like very still shots or very limited movement, it conveys so much in terms of how it's set up. And definitely want to give credit to Xavier, who is also a designer, writer, and did the voice acting for John in this one. I've interviewed him several times. I didn't even realize that he was the voice actor until I saw the credits come up at the end of the game. In terms of the general flow of this, each level is kind of built around the quasi-dreamscape of some of the areas from Max Payne, and more of the trippier areas out of Control and Alan Wake. You'll need to get to each hostage and save them in order to open up the elevator to travel further into the mysterious void. There is a lot of music as well to this game with a very hip-hop horror-infused soundtrack. In terms of the level design itself, this is kind of where I get to one of my major issues with the game. There really isn't enough of how the levels interact with the dreamlike logic for me. You see, while the levels are set up to be very maze-like, very trippy, the fact that we're exploring environments that are, by the lore, being stitched together doesn't really translate into doing interesting things with the gunplay or with the combat. All the enemies will follow one of two behaviors. They'll either hang back and try and snipe you, or they'll just charge headfirst at you. And you'll eventually get to this point where it just kind of feels like I'm going through the motions, trying to get to the next story beat, which the story, again, definitely carries this game. There are hidden collectibles and lore that you can find, as well as 2 endings, but for the most part, this is a game where you're going to run through, listen to a lot of music, and blast a lot of vampires, angels, and more. There are several levels explicitly built that kind of break the normal flow of the game, and those are some of my favorite levels. And I think I would have liked a little bit more, I guess, in terms of that, just as a way of breaking up the traditional pacing that the game set out. And most of the enemies, again, will not be that taxing. The most annoying one was the Puppet Master, who tends to just infinitely spawn these little enemies that can get in your way. But again, if you play any third-person shooter, you should be well acquainted to deal with these challenges. So this is a game that, if you're looking for an interesting story first, third-person shooter second, I would definitely give this one a recommendation. And this is a great game to study if you want to see how much having an approach to cinematography, framing cutscenes, and again, really solid voice acting can elevate a title. And with that, I would definitely like to thank both developers for giving me press keys to check out their games, and letting me to take a look at your games for a future stream and video. Please reach out. That's going to do it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to do the YouTubing stuff people tell you to do. If you're interested in more of my thoughts on design, check out my books wherever they are sold. Visit our Discord and Patreon, and come back for daily discussions on game design here, and on game wisdom, where you some of the art and science of games.